Chapter 8 Red in the Morning. On the second morning after the wedding, Adam and Roger and Nick set forth on foot. It was still so early that each blade of grass had its drop of dew glistening in the sun, and each little tuft and hummock its shadow. Adam's heart lifted to meet the new day. Where would he sleep that night? He did not know. He only knew that the road lay before him, and in its turns and hollows new sights and adventures were waiting. "It will rain before night," said Roger. "The sun rose red." "I've got my cloak," said Adam. "I can keep my hop dry under that." He had his other cot and breeches tied up in his cloak and hung on his back. His coverlet he had to leave behind with Matthew, who promised to keep it for him. The big portmanteau had been left too, and Roger carried a smaller bag like a pilgrim's scrip. Beyond the gates of the Delisle house, they turned to the right toward London. Roger, who was in one of his silent moods this morning, lengthened his stride, and Adam had to quicken his steps to keep up. Nick, with his nose to the ground, ran a zigzag course ahead of them. Not many people were on the road. Adam saw only an apprentice hurrying on an errand, a carter with a load of wood, a couple of grey-robed, barefoot friars. "I wish the Bishop of Lichfield would come out of his house," he said. "We've lived near him for almost 2 months, and I've never once seen him." "Why on earth do you want to see the Bishop of Lichfield?" said Roger. "Why, I told you." Grown-ups were queer, even Roger. If they told you anything, they expected you to remember it forever after, but when you told them something, half the time they forgot it so thoroughly that they did not even remember that they had ever heard it. "I want to see him so I can tell Perkin. His name is Walter Langton, and Perkin says he started out a poor man. He studied the law, and now he's the king's adviser. Perkin is going to be just like him." Roger only said "humph" to this. Roger was feeling very low in his mind. Adam knew about the loss of Bayard. Hugh had been dreadfully disturbed, too, when he heard. "Now I'll never get Bayard back," he said, bitterly. Exactly what he meant by that, Adam thought it best not to inquire. "That Jenkin fellow," Hugh had continued, "doesn't know one thing about horses. He'll ride Bayard to death. Why in the world couldn't Roger hold on to him after he got him?" Later, Hugh had said rather grumpily, "It isn't your fault, Adam. You've been decent about it." But things were not the same as they had been. It was almost like that first day when they had come from St. Albans. Adam missed Bayard himself, but on the whole he preferred walking to riding. The portmanteau behind the saddle was not very comfortable, and he felt uneasy about Nick all the time he was riding. "I bet I can walk all day now without getting tired," he said as they went under the wooden bar that the Knights Templars had set up across the road. "I couldn't have when I was at St. Albans. Studying makes you soft, but all the tilting and swimming and racing and wrestling I've been doing has hardened me up again. Look at my muscle." He tightened his fist and crooked his arm. "Look, Roger, feel it." Roger looked down at his son, and after a moment he smiled. He felt the hard and bulging muscle. "Wonderful," he said. "I hope your mind hasn't gone soft while your body's been hardening. Sir Edmund gave me some writing in Latin that I want you to read. My Latin's rusty." "Now?" "Later, when we can find a place to sit down and spread it out." The bridge over Fleet Stream was the real boundary of London, though Ludgate lay a bit ahead on the hill. Adam called Nick to heel, for already there were more people about, and carts and horsemen, and they crossed over the narrow river that emptied into the Thames between the house of the White Friars and the house of the Black Friars. Adam exclaimed, as he always did at the first whiff of the air in the city, "I know now why Sir Edmund would rather live in the Strand. London smells." It smelled of the pigs and cows and chickens that roamed at large. It smelled of the garbage that lay rotting in the middle of the streets. It smelled of the people who lived so close together. In some places the streets were so narrow, and the upper stories of the houses hung so far out over them that the sun never got through to sweeten things up. Adam's nose, used to clean, fresh air and country odors, wrinkled in disgust. Soon, however, he became used to the smell and even forgot about it. The mighty cathedral of St. Paul's loomed up before them, with the sun shining on the copper-gilt eagle that crowned its spire. Here was no quiet church removed from the stress of active life. This was a powerful temple of God in the heart of a busy city, swarming with people and noisy with their concerns. "Let's go in," said Roger. "I'll show you that parchment." Adam fastened Nick's leash to his collar, and they went in at the west door. Even inside, it was not quiet. The middle aisle, which was called Paul's Walk, was full of people, all apparently transacting important business. Adam saw 3 men of law in sober mantles walking up and down, talking and gesticulating. He saw a red-faced merchant stride up to another who had just entered and shout angrily, "Where have you been? I've been waiting all morning for you." And he saw 2 bearded knights in full armor come clanking through the crowd, while a baker's boy with a basket of bread on his arm darted out of their way. "Sooner or later," said Roger, "you see everybody you know in Paul's Walk." High above the din of voices and scuffling of feet, the bells shook out a cascade of rich golden sounds that ran in and out of each other joyously. People knew how to cast wonderful bells in the 13th century. From a chapel far down the long cathedral came beautiful, ordered singing. Roger led Adam to a window and took from his wallet a roll of parchment, which he spread out on top of a carved stone knight who lay with his feet crossed. It was the tomb of a man who had died in the First Crusade, but his shield made a very good table. "See," said Roger, "Sir Edmund gave me this to show to any of his friends whom we may meet along the way. What does it say?" Adam studied the square black letters that marched neatly across the parchment. "Salutem et amoris perpetuae firmitatem," he read, and translated slowly, "Greetings and assurances of perpetual love." "Skip all that part. What does he say about me?" "Egregium instorinem." Egregium means towering above the flock, outstanding minstrel, qui nuper mai file interfut nuptis, who was at the recent marriage of my daughter. "Ubi sum officium execute eleganta," where he exercised his office elegantly, "ad vos cum magna confidentia destinamus," we recommend to you with great confidence. That's fine, isn't it? Is there anything more? Yes, I can't read every word, but he asks them to give you a liquid subsidium, some subsidy, and then there's something about special grace. Roger rolled the parchment up and put it carefully into the leather wallet hanging on his belt. "That will do nicely," he said, "especially," he added with a flicker of a smile, "the subsidy." "Well, come on, egregium instroinum, we'd best be on our way." "I wish he had put something about Nick in it," said Adam, starting to walk off without noticing that Nick had sat down for a good scratch. The jerk of the leash all but upset him. "We could have said egregium instorinum et uis egregium canum." Roger flicked Adam's turned-up nose with his finger. "How about his outstanding son?" he said. When they came out of the south door of St. Paul's into the garth, they found that the sun had disappeared behind some spreading clouds, and the air was chilly. They walked down Deer Street, which the Romans had built, to Cannon Street, where the London Stone stood, which was so old that nobody knew who had put it there. All along the way Adam was saying, "Look, Roger, that huckster has some brambleberries," and "Roger, they're going to have bean pottage in that house. I smell it cooking." And finally, "Roger, I'm hungry." Then Roger took him to the cook shop on the Thames near Botolph's Wharf. It was the most amazing place Adam had ever seen. It existed only to sell hot food to people who lived elsewhere. There was a room with 2 long tables and benches, and at the end of it a wide opening into another room where furiously busy cooks ran to and fro against a background of blazing fires. Roger led Adam to a place near a window and called for roasted capon. A rather greasy-looking overgrown boy set a cup of ale and a small loaf of bread before each of them and went back to the kitchen. Adam took his knife out of his wallet and prepared his bread carefully. First he cut the whole loaf in half, then he cut the top part in four, and put the pieces together as if they were whole, and turned the bottom half down to make a trencher for his meat. After that he sat up very straight and looked about him. Hungry as he was, he would not be so impolite as to touch bread or ale before his meat came, lest he should seem either starved or a glutton. Across the table a round-faced chapman was eating fatted goose with parsley, and down the room a bit a monk in a brown robe attacked a large and steaming beef pie. The delicious odors of roasting meat filled Nick with longing. He stood up and put his paws on Adam's knee, giving a sigh so deep that it was almost a groan. When his portion of capon was set before him, Adam cut off a piece for Nick, and slipped it down under the table to him. After that, it was a race between them, with Adam losing, for Nick ate his bits with a snap and a swallow and was back asking for more before Adam could chew his mouthful up. The food was good. Not for many minutes did Adam speak. "The only thing I don't like about this," he said at length, batting the air before his face with his hand, "is the flies." Nick, as if to say that he agreed, jumped up and snapped at one. His leash slipped off Adam's knees. The fly buzzed away, and Nick followed, leaping and snapping. "Here, Nick," called Adam. "Come back." Nick, at the door, met a familiar pair of legs, which he paused to sniff at. "There's Jenkin," whispered Adam. "Here, Nick." Roger turned to look. The minstrel caught his eye and came over to the table. Nick trotted along with him, and when Jenkin flung his leg over the bench and sat down, the little dog stood up beside him to get his ears scratched. "That's a good dog," said Jenkin. He took a silver penny from his purse and tossed it up into the air, caught it on one hand and clapped it on the back of the other without uncovering it. "I'll match you for him," he said. "Call across twice out of 3, and you get the war-horse back. Fail, and I get the dog." "No," said Roger shortly. "The dog belongs to the boy." Adam glowered at Jenkin and snapped his fingers commandingly at Nick. Nick came to him, and Adam picked up the leash. "Sit down," he said, and Nick sat, his silky body pressed close against Adam's legs. Jenkin called for beef and leeks and ale, and then rested his elbows on the table and leaned forward. "Which way are you going?" he said. Evidently the subject of Nick was closed. "Across London Bridge," said Roger, briefly. "Winchester?" "Maybe." "Giles Fair?" Adam held his breath, waiting for Roger's answer. Giles Fair was the greatest fair in England. It came once a year and lasted for 3 weeks, and people from all over Europe brought their best wares to sell there. If they were going to Giles Fair, that would be something to look forward to. Roger grunted so that Adam could not tell whether he meant yes or no. Jenkin yawned. "That's where I'm going," he said. "But don't worry, it's big enough for both of us. Any time you want another game of dice, I'm your man." Roger stood up. "I play no more dice," he said. "Come, Adam." Adam, holding Nick short on the leash, followed his father out of the cook-shop and down to the wharf, where they stood and looked at the grey, ship-filled river. On their left, the Tower of London loomed up with surrounding grey walls, and a tall, whitewashed tower, very high and clean against the dingy clouds. "It looks like rain," said Adam. Still Roger said nothing. "Are we going to Giles Fair?" ventured Adam. "Yes, there's a good chance for minstrelsy there," answered Roger, putting his hand on Adam's shoulder. "I don't like that, Jenkin," declared Adam. "He wanted to get Nick. Hugh said he'd probably ride Bayard to death. Would he, Roger, do you think?" Roger's hand tightened on his shoulder. "Hush," he said. "Your voice carries too well. Look at the ships and think what they're bringing to London. Wines from France and Woad to make blue dye, and all kinds of fine silks and spices, and shellfish." "When will we get to Winchester?" interrupted Adam. "Never, unless we make a start." As they turned away from the wharf toward London Bridge, it began to rain.